What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be replacing a starter on a 2014 Nissan Altima. This car only has 100,000 miles and it's had about 3 starters replaced. So I'm not sure what's going on with these aftermarket starters, but it goes to show you that sometimes it's just best to go with OEM, even though it might be more expensive. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what needs to be done so that you guys can also replace your starter on your 2014 and up Nissan Altima. And as you guys can clearly see, the car doesn't do anything when I press the start button. I don't hear any clicks. The battery on this car is good. I tested it already. So the only other logical explanation would be the starter. In some rare cases, you might have a bad pulley that it's frozen up, and sometimes that is enough force against the engine that keeps it from cranking. So I'm gonna check that too, but I think we're just gonna have a simple case of a bad starter. So I'm just checking the vehicle here, and I've noticed that the belts are on their way out. This needs to be changed ASAP because it's gonna rip. There is already a cut on this belt, so it needs to be changed out. So I'm gonna first get the vehicle started, and then I'll talk to the customer to see if he wants to change the belt, but he really should change it because that's gonna leave him stranded. I'm gonna take off this intake tube here that kind of goes to the intake box. There is one fastener here, another one over here, and you should be able to just kind of wiggle this out. You're gonna have to take off this plastic piece here too, so there's little plastic clips that you need to unclip and pull it up. So I have that plastic piece out, and as you can see, with that out of the way, you should be able to get these 2 10s out and lift it out. I'm also gonna disconnect the negative terminal at this time. Set this off to the side. Remove this, and that's going to give us a lot more working area. So our starter is right there. So sometimes you can actually just hit your starter with the hammer, even though they don't recommend it. You do this to kind of test the starter. If you hit it with the hammer and it turns over, then you obviously have a bad starter. But that doesn't mean that if you hit it and it doesn't do anything, it doesn't mean that your starter is good. It's just a way of testing if it's the actual issue. So I'm gonna just tap it a little bit and see if the car will turn over. All right, let's see if that did the trick. Let's see if that did the trick. I actually did make a difference. I heard the starter actually click, and I can hear it click now. So we have a bad starter. So now that we know for sure that we have a bad starter, I'm gonna go ahead and remove it. There is some connections that go to the starter. There is one solenoid connection right here, which is held down by a 8mm nut right here. There's also the actual power cable that goes to the back, and that should be held down by a 12 if I'm not mistaken. So your starter is held down by 2 16mm bolts. There's one right up there, you can kind of make it out. There's another one right here underneath this wiring harness. There's also some connections that go to your starter. So there's a solenoid connection, which is a smaller gauge wire, and there's the actual power cable that goes to it that gives it power. That's also connected on the back of the starter, but it is kind of hard to get to. So what I recommend to do first is to unbolt the starter from the engine here and kind of turn it around so that you have better access at those connections on the back of the starter. So I know there's a lot of things in the way and it's kind of hard to see, but what I ended up doing here is I put an extension on my 3/8 ratchet, and I have a deep socket 16mm, and I was able to sneak it in a way that I was able to remove this bolt here on the bottom. The top one should be a little bit easier. If you have gear wrenches, this will be a lot easier. I didn't bring those with me today, so I'm just working with what I have. But if you have a gear wrench or just a regular wrench, you should be able to just get on that bolt here and have it positioned like over here, for example, and you'll be able to break it loose. That'll be the same thing for this other bolt that you can see right there. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the starter here and show you guys how to disconnect those connections on the back of the starter. And for the other top bolt, this is what I'm using. I'm just using my electric ratchet, removing the other 16mm on top. You don't have to use this setup. A gear wrench or just a regular wrench will do the trick. This is just a lot faster for me. So with that removed, the starter should be pretty much free, besides those two connections that go to it, which I'll remove right now in a second. Get the bolt out. The top one is going to be longer for sure. The bottom one is shorter, like you can see here. These are the two bolts that I took out. The long one goes on the top, the smaller one goes on the bottom. They are both 16mm. The starter should be loose now. I'm gonna go ahead and wiggle it out of here so that I can tilt it and get better access at those connections that are on the back of it. This is the back side of the starter. What you want to disconnect is this 13mm nut right here that holds down the power to the starter. There's also another smaller nut here that you want to disconnect. This is an 8mm, so go ahead and remove both of those and your starter should be free. There's a small washer there, don't lose it. Put that off to the side. Go ahead and disconnect the other smaller one right there. There's also a small washer on this connection here. And with that disconnected, the starter should be free. So let's just go ahead and lift it up and out of the way. I also decided to take out the serpentine belt because, as you can see, it was bad. So we're going to be replacing that as well with a brand new one. It's pretty easy to swap these out. There's a 17mm tensioner bolt on the bottom that you kind of need to move out of the way. There is a lot of videos that show you guys how this is done, so I didn't bother recording that for you. What I'll do now is put this belt on, and then we'll put the starter back on. So to put the starter back in, do the opposite of what you did to remove it. So I'll start by sneaking this down first, and then I'll connect the connectors here on the back. And then last thing that I'll do is I'll fasten down the two bolts that actually mounted to the side of the transmission here / engine. So don't forget your washer and then your nut. Do the same thing to the little one here. Then we'll fasten everything back down. So now that we have these connections in, just make sure to close them up here with the rubber boots on both sides. And then we'll go ahead and put this guy back on the vehicle here. So we'll just slide it back in. There we go. And then we'll just put the bolts back through the starter, fasten everything back down, and then we'll put these plastic pieces back on, turn on the vehicle, and just check to make sure everything's okay. Long bolt goes on the top. Short bolt goes on the bottom. And then fasten those guys down. Alright, so we have everything put back together. The starter is in, battery's connected. I'm gonna put this black intake back on along with the little cover, and then we'll test everything out, but it should be pretty much fixed. Alright, and let's test it out here. There we go. Started right up. Got a new belt, new starter, and that should be pretty much it. If you guys did find this video helpful, make sure to give the video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing for more Nissan content, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace out.